Well, hello, my fellow fanatical elves. This is the Cleveland Oracle Speaks. I am the Village Elliot. I attempt to tell you about the past, present, and future of the Cleveland Browns. My topic today is Amari Cooper, the offensive MVP of the Cleveland Browns, and in particular, should the Browns keep him, trade him, or extend him this offseason? It's a very complicated problem. Andrew Berry, of course, is the man who'll be making the decision on that. We'll try to think along with Andrew and see what we can come up with. Let me turn down the music, which is provided, by the way, by Free Sound Music, a volunteer contribution service. It's royalty-free, but I like to contribute to them because without them, there wouldn't be any music for this show. So thank you, Free Sound Music. And I'm also going to adjust the sound here to make it more conducive to speech. Just 1 second here while I do that, as I do on every show. And check that box and this one, and it should be a lot better now. Okay, all right, so here we are. And I want to talk about Amari Cooper, who was absolutely brilliant in 2023, despite the fact that he played half the season with backup to the backup to the backup quarterbacks. He had a rookie in Dorian Thompson Robinson, and then he also had P.J. Walker, who is a veteran, but really typically a third-string quarterback in his career, and not really a premier quarterback by any stretch of the imagination. So it was a difficult season for Amari Cooper. The circumstances were difficult, but he managed to persevere and was absolutely brilliant. And when he was catching balls from Deshaun Watson and then later in the season, he did really, really well when he was teamed, of course, with the Baltimore Ravens former quarterback. That really worked out very, very well. And we'll talk about that as we go along, too. All right, so let me get my PowerPoint up and ready. If you'll indulge me for just a minute. I'm going to share a screen. Window, Oracle Speaks, here he is. And there's my PowerPoint, and from the beginning, there we go. And so there's Amari Cooper. Thank you for Browns Fan UK at Browns Fan UK on Twitter. Provides a really nice picture of Amari Cooper there. And then also a counterpoint to that is a post from at Roll Pats, which for those who have video is kind of lusting for Amari Cooper to be traded to the New England Patriots so that he can pair with Marvin Harrison Jr., who they want to draft #1. And I think actually that's a pretty good sentiment from at Roll Pats. A lot of people want them to draft a quarterback just because he's a quarterback. I'm not sure that there is, a superstar quarterback to be had by the New England Patriots in the draft. Everybody's all excited that there's going to be 5 or 6 franchise quarterbacks in the draft. They have that every year. It's usually not true. If you look at who is really actually a franchise quarterback, there's about 1 every 2 years. There's not 5 per year. Get serious, NFL fans. You got to think straight about this. And in fact, the general managers are just as bad as the fans when they draft these guys so high in the first round. It's absolutely crazy. I don't know that there is a surefire franchise quarterback in this draft. They did have one last draft. That was C.J. Stroud. This draft, I'm not sure that there is. I think there's a lot of guys that can become first string quarterbacks in the NFL with 2 or 3 years of seasoning, but I don't know. I think probably if they could get Marvin Harrison Jr. and they could trade for Amari Cooper, that would be an interesting deal. So I think there is going to be that attempt to make a deal with the Cleveland Browns by teams like the New England Patriots. Patriots, of course, have the Browns' former offensive coordinator, and that's why that's particularly intriguing as a possibility. All right, but Amari Cooper was the 2023 Browns MVP. Deshaun Watson, of course, and Nick Chubb would normally be the candidates. They were disqualified because of injury, unfortunately. But Amari was just so outstanding that he might have been the best player on the Browns anyway. He was that outstanding. Most of the time, he was double covered, and a lot of the times, as I mentioned, he had to catch balls from P.J. Walker and Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who are not, at this point in their careers, the greatest of NFL quarterbacks. That held his numbers down. I said last season that I believed that Cooper could be an all-pro with the right quarterback throwing to him. And if you look at the 4 games in which Deshaun Watson played extensively, and I'm not counting the Indianapolis game where he only threw 5 passes before he got injured, but Cooper had 480 receiving yards in 4 games. That's 120 yards per game. Now, was that a fluke? Well, he had 4 games also with Joe Flacco, and in one of those games, he became the Browns' all-time single-game receiver with 265 yards versus Houston. And then the total for those 4 games was 485 yards. So he averaged 121 yards per game in the 4 games he had with Joe Flacco. So if you extend that out, he was really, when he had a veteran star quarterback, he was on a pace for 2,000 yards. It was absolutely insane. So I think that the comment that Cooper could be an all-pro, and, at the time I made that comment, he was catching balls from DTR. I think that was pretty well taken, if I may say so. He didn't make the all-pro team, but he did make his 7th Pro Bowl. 7 Pro Bowls is a lot. That's kind of on a Hall of Fame trajectory. If you make 7 Pro Bowls, that's a lot of Pro Bowls, man. So before I go on with that, I want to do a commercial on behalf of a book called The Chubbs. It's about the family of Nick Chubb and also Bradley Chubb, also playing in the NFL, and talks about how their family lived actually not as slaves, but they were free African Americans living in very rural Georgia in a community which became known as Chubbtown. They owned a blacksmith shop, farms, sawmill, cotton gin, wagon company, grist mill, syrup mill. And it persisted through the Civil War, although a lot was destroyed by a flood in 1916. The Chubb Chapel still exists there. But anyway, the book, The Chubbs, was compiled by Clemmy B. Watley, PhD. It's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, eBay, and other vendors on the internet. Check it out. It's a must for anybody that's interested in the history of antebellum United States of America, and also football fans will find it also fascinating because of Nick Chubb. It's just an incredible story. I bought it. I appreciated it very much. That's why I'm passing it on to you. And I'll pause now for other commercial announcements. Thanks to Johnny Cleveland. On some of the platforms, it'll be a 2 or 3 minute interlude. On other platforms, it'll just be a 5-second pause, which I'll start now. And we're back. So let's talk about Amari Cooper's contract and what it means to the Cleveland Browns. He's due $20 million in salary in 2024. $20 million in salary in 2024. But the cap number is actually $23.8 million, which includes $3.8 million in non-recoverable bonus money. Okay, remember that the bonus money is paid in one lump sum, but the charges to the cap are spread out over the years in the contract. So that's why, even though he signed his extension last year, his bonus is part of his bonus is charged to this year. He also has some additional bonus years in 2025 and I think 2026, even though he's not actually signed up to play in those years. The bonus can actually extend for more years than the contract actually covers for his playing time. which, okay, that makes no sense, but that's the way the NFL's got it set up. Those are called voidable years. So those things will be charged to the Browns cap immediately if he's traded. So there'll be an additional $7.6 million that will come into play if they were to trade him. The net is that if they trade Cooper, they will recover $12.5 million from this year's cap. And they'll also recover money from the 2025 cap and 2026 cap. But there is a payback if they decide to trade him. Why would they do that? Well, one reason is that they're currently $20 million over the 2024 cap, and they need to reduce that very soon by the start of the fiscal year in March. I think it's in like March 20th or something like that. But anyway, they need to get that $20 million over the cap fixed immediately, and then by and by they need to clear an additional 10 million or so for replacement players that they will need over the course of the season, and they also need to have a practice squad. So those dollars are very important. Oh, and by the way, they're also planning to have an NFL draft this season, and those draft picks also expect to get paid. So there's no rule that says that they have to have draft players, that they have to sign them, but I think they would want to, don't you think? So they're going to have some additional money. One way that they can do that, and the largest way, is by extending Deshaun Watson. Also, if they extend Nick Chubb, they'll get some cap relief in year one. And so all told, that will probably make at least $30 million, probably 35 or something like that. So they'll be able to do that. They'll be able to afford it. They do not have to cut Amari Cooper in order to make their salary cap. Okay, they do not have to do that. But it is tight. You know, if you are of the mind that, I want to sign this free agent, I want to sign that free agent, I want to make this move and make that move. Well, you can't do all of that unless you do something more than extend Deshaun Watson and Nick Chubb. You're going to have to make some cuts, maybe cut or trade an offensive lineman, and you would have to think about making a trade for Amari Cooper. There's not a lot of ways that the Browns can logically reduce their salary cap limit this season. So for years, the Browns were kind of immune to that because they always had a positive balance, but that has been spent out. This is the first year that they've actually gone negative. All right, so the wide receiver room looks like this for those who have video. We normally have 6 people in the wide receiver room, and there's at best 5 names that we can attach to the wide receiver room. At best 5, and really maybe only 4 that make sense at the moment. Amari Cooper, of course, is the offensive MVP. He's the wide receiver number 1. No problem with that. Even at this point, it starts to drop off significantly. Wide receiver 2 is currently Cedric Tillman. He's a talented wide receiver, but he was inconsistent. A lot of times it seemed to me, at least, that he gave up on plays, started to assume that the play was over, and then it wasn't over, and he was actually targeted, and there he is jogging away as if the play was over, and Flacco or Watson was trying to complete a pass to him, and that looked really bad. So we need to see some more hustle out of Cedric Tillman. Maybe some more game awareness would be a phrase that would describe what's needed there. Rookies do make a lot of mistakes, and hopefully Tillman will be one of the rookies that learns from his mistakes and improves. But I think that's a question mark. We want to see that he's really going to improve, not just assume that he's going to improve. He didn't do enough last season, needs to do more. Speaking of more, Elijah Moore had a very good season for the Browns as the slot receiver. He's not really a big guy. I think there's an injury concern there, but we do like Elijah Moore. He established himself very well. He came as the result of a draft trade where we traded a second-round pick, wound up with a third-round pick, which became Cedric Tillman, and also Elijah Moore came over from the New York Jets. So that was a good deal. Wide receiver 4 is David Bell. David Bell was a draft pick last season, or 2022, I should say. And he's a very good possession receiver. You throw the ball to him, he catches it. Pretty simple. He's not a guy with breakaway speed. Maybe you could compare him to Jarvis Landry, but I think you can rely on him to catch passes. So I think he's very definitely worthy of a spot on the roster, and like David very much. He can probably start for you if necessary, but wide receiver 4 seems like a good position for him. Wide receiver 5, Michael Woods. I'm not sure why the Browns drafted him. He was not a star in college. He was a 4.55 guy or something like that in the 40-yard dash at the combine. Did not demonstrate exceptional hands. Not exceptional speed, did not have exceptional production in college. Nevertheless, the Browns liked him and drafted him. They think that he can catch balls in traffic, I guess, but we'll see about that. At the moment, he's got 45 NFL yards, all achieved as a rookie. He was on IR all of last season. We don't have a wide receiver number 6. You normally have 6 wide receivers on a typical NFL roster. There isn't a number 6 wide receiver right now. Somebody is going to have to be obtained either as a signing from a recycled veteran or an undrafted free agent, or the Browns are going to have to draft somebody in this upcoming draft. But it's not just wide receivers. It's also the tight end room is also thin. Harrison Bryant is going to be leaving this season as a free agent. If the Browns don't re-sign him, they're left with David Njoku. Okay, now that's not a problem. He also made the Pro Bowl last season, so we love David. And then Jordan Akins, I think, is 32 years old, and he's the second tight end, and he went from around 500 yards with Houston in 2022, and then he had 100 and some for the Browns in 2023. So he had a significant drop-off in production when he went from Houston to Cleveland. Now, the advantage that he has is that he's familiar with Deshaun Watson, caught a lot of balls from him in his career, but he did not have a good year in 2023, and we've got to really keep an eye on him. Does he still have it or not? I think he needs to prove that in training camp. But the Browns' depth problem in tight end is even worse than it is at wide receiver. They're going to have to come up with at least one tight end and probably 2. And the Browns, by the way, like to run the 2 tight end offense, or the 2 tight end formation, I should say. They use a lot, like to use that. They used that in Houston when Deshaun Watson was the quarterback there. And there's nothing tactically wrong with a 2 tight end formation, but you actually have to have 2 tight ends for that to work. You can't just throw a ineffective tight end in that position and expect great things to happen just because you have 2 tight ends. No, you have to have a quality individual at that position in order to work. So I think the Browns do have depth problems. If they were to trade Amari Cooper, they would have to replace him with 2 people at least. They need to sign an additional wide receiver and an additional tight end. So maybe they might do that. They might go for a younger wide receiver and a draft pick, something like that. But that's a tough proposition. And so what do they need to do as an overarching strategy for Amari Cooper? I think his cap number is actually not that hard, or not that large. You may think that it's a huge number. It sounds really giant, but there are 13 other wide receivers at the moment that are currently drawing more as a cap charge for the 2024 season. And I don't believe that there are 13 wide receivers in the NFL that would be more valuable to the Cleveland Browns than Amari Cooper. I think Amari Cooper is that good. He's definitely worth the investment, particularly because it's not a multi-year contract at this point. It's only one season. So Cooper was an overachiever. If the Browns were to keep him just for 1 year at the $20 million per year figure, that's probably a fair price to pay. Now, the Browns could also try to extend him, give him a pay raise, and their typical modus operandi would be to dump the additional extended charges into 2025, into 2026. That may not be the right answer. Might be great for the near term, but he'll be 32 in 2026, and those budgets, the 2025 and 2026 budgets, are already under duress because the Browns have made a lot of guaranteed contracts, a lot of multi-year contracts, and there's not a lot of cap room even at this point in 2025 and 2026. So I don't think that they can just extend contracts and dump the money into future years. I think there will have to be a pullback, and certainly in 2026 and probably 2025. And you think to yourself, oh, I don't care about the futures. I only care about this year. We only care about this year. We're not going to worry about the future. But that's not true. The future will come and you will be worried about it. The nature of football is they play it every year. And if you just completely blow everything on one attempt to make the Super Bowl, teams that do that are usually remorseful, and they will have consecutive losing seasons if they totally sabotage their budget in one of those seasons. So I think they do have to get their house in order. I don't think that they can afford to give Amari Cooper a 3-year contract and then backload it into 2025 and 26. I don't think that that's a viable strategy. So I think what would be the best for the Cleveland Browns is if they can maintain the status quo, that they pay him his $20 million for 2024 and allow him to play out his option and take off next year as a free agent. I think that might be the best thing. We can try to re-sign him at that point. We don't need to re-sign him a year early. On the other hand, if there is a team that's willing to give him multiple years guaranteed at this point, if New England, with Alex Van Pelt as its offensive coordinator, is just an example. This is a hypothetical example. Don't have any inside information that a trade is really in the works. But if there were a trade partner that was interested in extending Amari Cooper for multiple years and giving him guarantees, in other words, that are better than what the Cleveland Browns are prepared to offer, I think it's probably the right thing to allow that trade to go forward. And then with the cap savings that result, then I think that it might be not a bad idea to try to sign a replacement wide receiver that's a few years younger than Cooper, with the idea of keeping this player, this hypothetical player, for a 2 or 3 year period and have him be good for all of those years. In other words, this would be somebody that's like 26 or 27 years old, and that we would expect to be improving over the length of the contract, rather than having one good year up front and then trying to hang on later on. So I think that's who the Browns should be looking at. Should not be looking for a veteran on his last legs and giving him a 3-year contract that he may not be able to play out. I think they need to be thinking of a younger player, somebody younger than Amari Cooper, if they do make that trade, and somebody that they can build with, not somebody that will turn decrepit with old age, like me, in the next 2-3 years. So I think that's what the strategy would be. But the best thing is to simply keep him at the $20 million a year level. It's not as high as you think. There are other receivers who are getting more money, who are not as good, and even players that are older than age 30 that are getting these enormous cap charge numbers. So I think that the Browns can afford to hold on to him, and they can afford to maintain the status quo, and worry next year about whether they want to extend him or not. But for now, just let him play football. That's what I think is the most logical move. Don't want to cut him, certainly. Trade only if there's really a interested trade partner that will do something to improve Amari Cooper's situation and also improve the Browns' situation. I kind of doubt whether that trade partner actually exists. But if it did, I think the Browns should consider pursuing that. But I would expect there's probably a 90% chance that Amari Cooper will be back with the Cleveland Browns in 2024, and that he'll continue to be the number one wide receiver on the team, that he'll continue to be a threat to make the Pro Bowl, and I hope that that's what actually happens. I'm just really so impressed by Amari Cooper and the season that he had in 2023. In many ways, it was his best season ever, surpassing what he had accomplished in Dallas over, I don't know, he was there, 7 or 8 years, some number like that. He was there a long time, made the Pro Bowl several times, but this may have been his best year ever. He really did a fantastic job for the Cleveland Browns, and I hope everybody appreciates what he did. So everybody have a great day. That's all I've got for now. Be blessed, and we'll talk again real soon. Take care.